Peter Bogdanovich is here. His personal story is as interesting as any film he has or ever will direct. It is, as we should be the first to acknowledge, a tale of fame and celebrity and high achievement and deep valleys. He began as an actor and eventually became a film critic. After working with the likes of Orson Welles and Alfred Hitchcock, he started directing films. His second one, The Last Picture Show, earned him 8 Academy Award nominations. What followed were 3 disappointing films, both critically and commercially: The Murder of His Girlfriend, Dorothy Stratton, and then 2 bankruptcies. He now has a recurring role on The Sopranos as an actor, and his latest film, The Cat's Meow, is his first feature in 8 years. Here is a trailer from that film.
But you do not know what happened aboard this boat.
I think this is going to be a most enjoyable boat ride.
Yeah, the cat's meow.
I am pleased to welcome Peter Bogdanovich back to this table. Welcome.
Thank you, Charlie. Thanks.
Now, did anything I say, all that ring true? I mean, this has been a rather remarkable life.
A swift run-through of the life, yeah.
It seemed longer for you, didn't it?
It did seem a bit
15 seconds.
A little bit longer, yeah.
Now, do you feel that this, as some people have described, is a comeback?
I guess so. I mean, let me put it this way. It's the first time in almost 30 years where I've had a picture that I like, that I think works, that the public likes, that the critics like, and that the studio likes and is pushing. That it hasn't happened since Paper Moon.
You were telling me that the reviewer A.O. Scott from the New York Times
set a precedent in my career. I don't think he knows it. But in 35 years of reviews that I've gotten over whatever picture, it's the first time that any critic has ever said that mentioned that I started out in the theater.
I knew that.
Yeah, you did. You mentioned I was an actor, but believe me, because that is a key issue with me, because I started as an actor in the theater and as a director in the theater. Right. And the perception has been for years that I started out as a film historian or film critic.
In fact, my perception was that until I prepared for this interview.
So there you are, and it's only because of The Sopranos and because of something I wrote, which I stressed in Who the Devil Made It, which was a bit of a bestseller, that people have finally come around to realizing that I'm an actor, you know. Stop thinking of me as some intellectual.
But you are still all those other things. I mean, you're a director, you're an actor, you still write, you still write books. You were here a couple of years ago for a book.
Yes.
Why did it take so long?
Which part?
The directing part. I mean, it's 8 years since you made a film.
Well, actually,
and it's
Charlie,
been longer than that since you've had a film that everybody loved, as you just said.
Yeah, well, I tell you, I was directing, but I wasn't doing theatrical features. I did 5 television films in 5 years, and I shot them very fast, and nobody saw them except millions of people. You know, nobody ever talks about it, but I did, 3 of them were on the network, and they won their night. Yeah. So I said a lot of people saw. And
well, just tell us what the best of those was.
There were a couple of good ones. Probably the most impressive one was one I did that Barbra Streisand produced for Showtime, about World War II, called Rescuers, 2 women, about 2 women who saved Jews during World War II. Right. True story. We shot the 2 hours in 19 days. I don't know how.
Well, does that suggest to you that perhaps more people could do that if they tried?
Charlie, I couldn't have made The Cat's Meow, which we did in 31 days, if I hadn't have done 5 television films back to back in 5 years, all of them 19, 20, 22, 24 days.
It gave you what?
Put me back in that place where there's a certain rhythm where you have to go fast. But you can go fast and just drop shots and not get what you want. But the trick is to get what you want, but go fast. And that means you have to know exactly what you're going to shoot. You have to make decisions on the set. You can't shoot what they call luxury shots. You can't shoot coverage. You can't shoot things. I might need that. No. You got to shoot only what you need. And that's how we did Cat's Meow. But I don't think I could have done it if I hadn't had that kind of practice. You know, you watch them shoot The Sopranos. These guys are superb. They do that an hour. They do it in 9 days or something. That's fast, you know? And these directors are superb. And you don't get the feeling on the set that you're being rushed. It isn't like, okay, here we go. No, but they do it, and it's a certain rhythm. And frankly, I think it helps the work. I think it helps the creativity.
To have a certain rhythm and urgency about getting it done.
Yes, movies take too long. They lumber onto the screen. It's like a caravan, $100 million, 72 days. I think you feel it in the pictures. Now, I sat there and I thought many times, well, John Ford made She Wore a Yellow Ribbon in 28 days. He made The Informer in 15. What are we talking about?
This is what's great about you. You know all the history of film.
Everybody moved faster, Charlie. Nobody took forever to make pictures. All the classic films that we talk about, those were made on reasonable budgets, and quickly.
There weren't a lot of pyrotechnics either.
No, there wasn't all that special effects stuff, which I'm not a big fan of.
Boy, you have been familiar, and I want to come later in this conversation to people like Billy Wilder and others, because you have...
I didn't know Billy well.
You did?
No, he's one of the few I didn't know well. I knew him a little bit.
Okay. But you appreciated his contribution?
Yes, of course. But I knew Hawks and Hitchcock and Orson and Jack Ford a lot better.
Who do you think you stole, and I mean that in the best sense of the word,
well, Howard Hawks used to say, if you're going to steal, Peter, steal from the best.
Exactly.
So I only stole from the best.
But everybody steals. I mean,
well,
I think
of course.
Shakespeare stole.
Oh, most of the plots.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point.
I learned the most and had the most influence on me probably was Orson Welles, but not so much visually. And Jean Renoir, and John Ford, and Hitchcock, and Hawks.
Now, what did they all share in common?
Well, they knew what they wanted when they were shooting. They only shot what they needed. They worked quickly and efficiently. I think one of the key things that was shared by almost all the directors I ever interviewed was that they all took pride in being able to achieve something without it costing a lot of money. Of making it seem like it was elaborate and difficult, but actually they did it in a different way so that it was magic.
All right, I want to come back to some of that. Let me talk about your movie, because did you ever doubt that you could make another good movie?
No. No, it was just
once you have the ability, you have the ability.
Well, but there's so many things that you have to have, including a lot of luck. I once said to John Ford about something that I loved in one of his pictures. I said, how did that happen? That wonderful moment was, and he said, oh, I was just an accident. I said, what? He said, yeah, most of the good things in pictures happen by accident.
That's great.
So I thought, wow, I'd only made one picture that time. I thought, is that possible? So armed with this statement, I went to Wells, Ford was Wells's favorite director, American director, and I said, Ford said, is that true, Orson? And Orson says, yes. Yes, you could even say that a director is a man who presides over accidents.
That's great.
Well, it never was more clear to me than on The Cat's Meow, because so many things happened that I cannot in all conscience say, oh, that was my idea, or that was because I said. No, we had a lot of luck, a lot of really good luck. Things that I thought were bad luck turned out to be good luck. Actors that became unavailable and we had to get another actor, and that actor is better than the one we had. Things like that happened all the way through the picture.
That's true in life.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
This movie, where did it come from?
Well, it's a strange story. It's a kind of spooky story, but what happened...
We like spooky stories.
Okay, well, it's, again, fate. 33 years ago, when I was interviewing Orson Welles for the book we did about his career, where he was trying to set the record straight, we were having a conversation about Citizen Kane, and he was at pains to explain to me that, contrary to popular opinion, Charles Foster Kane, was not based exclusively at all on William Randolph Hearst, but was rather a composite of 3 or 4 people, including a guy named McCormick, who built the Chicago Opera House for his girlfriend, who was a singer. That whole aspect of Kane comes from McCormick, nothing to do with Hearst. And in telling me this, as an example, he told me the story of what the movie The Cat's Meow became, of what happened on Hearst's yacht in 1924 when there was a mysterious death. It was what turned out, I don't want to spoil it for the movie, but it was a murder.
Yeah.
who was on the yacht, what happened, Charlie Chaplin, Marion Davies, Thomas Ince, Luella Parsons. He told me the whole thing in about 3 well-chosen paragraphs, and I said, my God, where did you hear this? And he said, oh, Marion Davies' nephew, Charlie Lederer. He's a very good screenwriter, and he told it to me. He knew about it since he was 12, you know, because it happened when he was a kid. Well, I listened to it and thought, what a story, and never thought much about it again. 30 years later, significantly, I'm on an ocean voyage. The whole thing plays on a yacht on an ocean voyage. I'm on an ocean voyage with a whole bunch of movie people on an extended film festival, a Telluride Film Festival. Roger Ebert's on the ship, and Ken Burns and Chuck Jones and so on. And Roger is deconstructing Citizen Kane for the passengers. So at lunch one day, alone, I tell him this story Orson told me about Hearst and what happened on the yacht. And Roger's mouth falls open like mine. He says, Jesus, God, I didn't know that. He says, sounds like it'd make a good movie. I thought, yeah, I guess. I swear, this sounds made up. I get home from that voyage, and on my desk is this script. I pick it up, I look through it, says the cat's meow, whatever, and I look through it, it says Ince, Hearst, Marion, Chaplin. I said, my God, it's that story. I read it, and it was quite a good dramatization of exactly what Orson had told me 30 years before.
Where did it come from?
2 fledgling producers and a writer who'd been working on it for 10 years, wrote it as a screenplay, then wrote it as a play, which was done briefly in Los Angeles, and then rewrote it as a screenplay. And they sent it to me because they thought that I'd be good for it.
All right, roll tape. This is where, before boarding the yacht, Luella, played by Jennifer Tilly, meets Charlie Chaplin, played by Eddie Izzard, and they meet for the first time. Take a look.
Did you happen to notice the rave review I gave your last picture, A Woman of Paris?
Yes, I did. Thank you. That was most kind.
So deserved. So deserved. It just stinks that nobody went to see it. Well, at least you won't lose your shirt on the next picture, too. I hear at least you have the good sense to be in this one. The Gold Rush. I hear that's just a hint as to how much this picture is costing you.
There it is. Now, was it hard to attract all these very good actors?
Again, we got really lucky. No, they all wanted to do it when we finally got them.
Because they liked the script, they liked you, they liked what?
The script, and they liked me.
Right.
And that was really it. And they didn't like the money. It was very low money. They certainly didn't do it for the money.
Was raising the money hard?
No, lucky. We sent, the first people we sent the script to was Lionsgate. And Mike Pasternak at Lionsgate. And they liked it, and they said, let's do it.
What's been, for you, the most difficult thing about directing?
Getting to do what I wanted to do, and then getting it released properly.
Yeah, released properly.
Yeah,
meaning and having it distributed at the right time, in the right way, with the appropriate promotion.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you know, any form of entertainment or art is a kind of communication. If you can't get it to the public, what's the good of it? And I've had trouble with some. I've made a few pictures I think are pretty good that nobody ever saw because they never got distributed.
Well, tell me which one you think is best of the ones that nobody ever saw.
Well, there's one that I made with Ben Gazzara in Singapore called St. Jack, which won the Critics' Prize at Cannes. At Venice, the first time it had been given since Clockwork Orange. It was a tremendous success in Europe. America hardly saw it. A picture called They All Laughed with Audrey Hepburn and Ben Gazzara and Johnny Ritter and Dorothy Stratton I liked very much. That's the one I lost my shirt on because I tried to distribute it, which is impossible.
Why would you do something stupid like that?
I was an idiot. And, no, I was reverberating from a tragedy, and I made an awful lot of wrong decisions. An enormous number of wrong decisions, which ended up with bankruptcy. It was all done because I was paranoid, suspicious, and sort of out of my mind.
After the death of
Dorothy
Stratton
was murdered,
You just lost it.
Yeah, and I didn't know I'd lost it. I thought this was perfectly rational, what I was doing, you know. I mean, I thought, it's all right, you know, I'll just distribute it myself.
Yeah, but didn't you have friends say, for God's sakes, Peter?
Yeah, I was unstoppable. People said to me, Peter, you can't do this. You're going
to lose your everything.
I did.
Peter.
I put up the house. I lost everything.
Yeah, and so what was it, I mean, I don't want to say what was it like, but that's what I want to know, when you lost everything.
Well, it took time. It sort of went over. It took a while, you know.
You mean like I'm falling?
I'll tell you, Charlie, I'll answer that really straight. When it happened, the bankruptcy in '85, all I can say is that nothing could be like what happened with Dorothy. So everything that's
relative.
bad that's happened afterward is still relative. I mean, a murder is, as so many people discovered on September 11th, it's just, there's nothing like it. You don't, in the shock, we're not built for shock.
Of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Sudden death, murder, premeditated murder. You know, it's a very good writer named Eric Schloss is writing a book called A Grief Like No Other. And it's based on its interviews he did with families of victims of violent crime. It's just a tough one to get over. You don't get over it. You live with it.
Help me understand this. This is a very interesting point. I mean, you would just think that the loss of that person would be the overwhelming grief, but you're saying the fact that it's a violent crime, that they suffered, makes it
well, you can imagine
exponentially more hard.
Imagine somebody you love. It's not just that they get killed; that they get tortured and then murdered, and then every day that goes by is a day that was taken away from them, and from us who cared about the person. So it isn't like you say, okay, get closure on it, put it behind you. No, because you're living with it. Because you say, okay, today, now Dorothy be 42, or whatever.
You still say that, don't you?
Oh yeah. Sure, it's 22 years that they took away.
How do you cope? I mean, how do you eventually cope?
You learn to live with it.
That's it, live with it.
Yeah, you learn with it, and you learn with it, and that's part of your life. And it's not terrible. I mean, because you learn to live with it, and that you get a certain, you have a certain understanding of the fact that the spirit is immortal. And that you feel her, you know, if you're lucky, you feel the presence and so on. But of course, you still miss the person.
But you can't get up every day and say what might have been.
No, God, you do that. You do that, but you know, you get past that part of it. You can't do that. You learn to live with it on a daily basis, but it's not. Yeah, no, you don't sit around just regretting all the time. You can't. Got to go on. But it's tough.
More than anything else, that's what happened to you.
Yeah.
More than anything.
It's like an atomic bomb went off at my feet and somehow I didn't get killed. It's the only way I can put it. And I'm sure the people who experience it on September 11th know what I'm talking about. I watched those people afterward, broke my heart. You know, they were 2-3 days afterward, and they're talking on TV, and I thought, they don't know what they're doing. They're just getting through on guts, you know, and they had a lot of guts. It broke my heart. People going around with those photographs of missing, and you say, well, they're dead, you know, but they don't want to face it. It's just, and, you know, people say, oh, it's been 6 weeks. 6 weeks, it's been 6 months. That's nothing. 5 years is tough, right? The people who've been through this, I went through some counseling, said the 5th year is sometimes the worst. I don't know why, but I remember the 5th year was the worst for me. 85. I went bankrupt that year, but that was, you know, after the anniversary of the murder. I don't know why, but 5 years. So, time is very, very relevant. What's the word? Time is relative.
Relative.
It's
right.
very relative, and everything gets skewed. For example, the 10 years between 1971 and 1981 seems, or 1980, 9 years, seems very long. But the time from when Dorothy was killed to now doesn't seem as long. And it's been 20 years. It doesn't seem like 20 years. Maybe it seems like 10.
I'm resisting saying to the audience Dorothy Stratton was brutally murdered by, was it husband?
Her estranged husband.
Estranged husband in a vicious, awful way. In 1980.
August.
In August of 1980. Yeah. Let me come back to Cat's Meow. Hearst is played by Edward Herrmann.
Yes,
a great actor.
Superb actor.
Set this scene up. He tells Marion how he feels about her. Marion is played by
Kirsten Dunst. Yes. Well, you know, he was, at the time in the story, Hearst was 62 and married with children, all living on the East Coast. And his mistress was Marion Davies, who was about in her early, well, about 25 at the time. And he was crazy about her, absolutely crazy about her. And insecure about her, and felt that she was possibly cheating on him, and he kind of suspicious as hell. And she loved him. That's it.
Edward Herrmann, here it is.
I love you so much.
I'll never stop, and I'll always be here. Don't you know that?
Thank you.
Every time you thank me, what do I say?
Shut up and keep me happy, Pops.
Exactly.
Do you want to make any kind of films?
That's a great question. Yeah. My favorite writer is Robert Graves.
Yeah.
Who, although he did every kind of writing in the world, novels and histories and criticism, he was a great man. He considered himself a poet. And he said that he used to ask the question, whenever he started to write a poem, he asked the question, is this poem necessary?
That's a great line. That's
Isn't
a great
it
line.
great
Yeah.
line?
Somebody said...
And I thought it only takes very little to write a poem. You take a piece of paper and a pencil. To make a movie takes an enormous amount of equipment and time and energy and people and so on. So the question I would like to ask before I make every picture I make from now on is this one necessary? And I wish people would ask that question. There's an awful lot of unnecessary movies being made. So I'd like to make a few that are, somewhat necessary. And that doesn't mean they have to be, I'm perfectly happy to do a comedy that just is only necessary because it makes people laugh.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But, but something that's worthwhile.
Is there somewhere inside of you this film that you know you want to make, and either you know exactly what it is or you sort of have a sense of it but you don't quite know?
No, I've got several films that I want to make. To be honest, I think I have more films that I want to make now than I ever have. Because I've been thinking a lot. And I've also spent a lot of time over the last 20 years reading things that I thought would make some good movies. I have 3 novels that I really want to make, 3 by Robert Graves. Yeah. I've got 2 original screenplays that I'm pretty keen on. We're going to make, actually, back-to-back in the next year. One is a ghost picture I've been working on for 20 years. And it's a comedy, and it's very personal. And it's also, I hope, funny and kind of touching. It's called Wait For Me. Yeah. And it's a comedy about a movie director and 6 ghosts, and he has 6 ex-wives, and it's a wild comedy drama set in Europe.
A lot of the best films I know about relationships, aren't they, in the end? They are about...
Finally, that's what I think it's about. For things to really get to people, they have to be able to associate or have some kind of personal human connection with it, And I think one of the reasons that Cat's Meow worked out was, I think, all the actors and I, and the writer, but specifically the actors and I, could understand where these people were coming from, being all show business people.
I tell people all the time about doing what you and I are doing now. At least half of it is about the engagement. It's not about the question. It's not about the preparation. It's not even about, it's about listening, but it's about the engagement. Somebody has to lock in.
Yes.
To make it happen.
Absolutely.
I imagine it's the same way about films at their best.
Well, at their best...
People are on the same page, etc.
Oh, boy, that is it. Because on this picture, we had 14 actors, basically. That was the ensemble. And we were all together. We all went to Greece together in this godforsaken little town. We shot the exteriors. And we bonded. I'd say to the actors, what do you think about this? Do you think this line works? And Eddie was playing Chapman, so I don't think he'd say it that way. Or Kirsten would say, I don't think I'd say anything. Or Ed Herman would say, he wouldn't do that. They all were on the side of their characters. They all trusted me. I trusted them. So that and the writer was there, and we were all working together to really try to do what was right. And that all had to do with engagement, all had to do with communication. The director and actors need an audience. They love an audience. That's what one of the reasons they act. But there is no audience in a movie except basically the director. He's their first audience. So I am like the most, interested audience that they'll find, and they know that I'm there to approve and to maybe correct, but not to dictate.
You obviously, to have done what you have done, have to be a good listener. You can't have the relationship with Ford or Wells, especially Wells, without being a good listener.
Well, it's part of the whole. But acting is listening too.
That's what I'm coming to.
Yeah.
Is that a trait that makes a good director or a good actor?
Oh yeah, sure. John Wayne said, or was it? Who was it? Anyway, acting is reacting. And what are you reacting to? Something you just heard. you know. And John Wayne says, I'm a good reactor. They call me a action actor, but I'm just a good reactor. And you see his pictures. You see when they cut for a reaction, he does great reactions. You know what I mean? And good acting has a lot to do with listening carefully. I mean, what do I do on The Sopranos? I don't know if I'm good at it, but I sure listen to Lorraine Bracco when she's talking. That's all I'm doing.
Now, how did that happen?
Again, just lucky, and it does connect with Orson again. It's weird.
It is.
No, it really is, because I was thinking about that last night, how much he's been in my life since he died.
This movie and this acting role.
Yes, yeah, because in 1993, David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos, was doing a series called Northern Exposure, and he called me up and he said, we're doing a special show about Orson Welles on Northern Exposure. I said, how are you going to do that? And he told me how they were going to work it into the plot. This was about 8 years after Orson had died, a year after our book, This Is Orson Welles, had come out. He said, well, it's an elaborate thing, and we'd like to bring you to Seattle, where they were shooting this Alaskan town, and you'd be there for about a week, and you're Orson's friend, and we bring you there, and it's a whole, and we'll send a writer, and you interested? I said, oh, God, yeah, sure. So they sent a writer over, and we worked it out, and they wrote in the special script for me, and I was playing Peter Bogdanovich. We did it. It was a terrific show called Rosebud. And about 2 days into shooting, David calls me up. He says, have you acted before? And I said, yeah, I started out as an actor when I was a kid. I was 15. He said, oh, you ought to do more of it. You've got a lot of presence. I said, oh, well, gee, thank you. Thanks. It's very nice of you. 7 years later, he calls me again. And he says, I'm doing a show called The Sopranos. We're going into our second season. I said, David, there isn't anybody who doesn't know that. He said, well, listen, Lorraine Bracco plays a therapist, psychiatrist, and she has so much trouble with Soprano that she needs to see a psychiatrist. We thought you could play that. Yeah. And I said, oh, I'd love to. He said, well, come on down and talk to us. I went down and talked. 45 minutes. I left. They called me about an hour later and said, we'd like you to do it.
So no screen test, no audition, nothing?
No, just talked. Just talk for a while.
Yeah. He can do it, they said.
They said he could do it.
Yeah. Have you ever done, you've never done anything in terms of, there's a documentary now about Bob Evans, as you know.
I haven't seen it. I hear it's great.
I mean, I've heard that, and I think it's going to be shown at Cannes.
I heard it was great.
It would be great for you to do a kind of on-stage thing because of all these experiences and how you can retell conversations, and because all the things you can use because your life has been in film. You know, and just stand in front of an audience and talk about your life. It's
funny you should say that. I have been doing that though since I was on your show about that book, Who the Devil Made It. I think you made a comment about that at the time. You said you ought to do your impressions.
Right.
And I did quite a lot of it. I appeared maybe 30, 40 times around the country.
And campuses and places like that?
Yeah, and ladies groups, and you know, they pay you to come talk about the book. And I basically tell stories. I don't pontificate. I tell stories about what happened to me with Jack Ford or John Wayne or Orson or Hitchcock or whatever. And I do
Cary Grant or
all that. And people do like it. And you know, and I like it because it's like channeling the people. I tell a story about Jimmy Stewart, and I'm explaining it, and then suddenly I'm doing Jimmy, and it's like he's around.
And you could do a conversation between Cary Grant and Jimmy.
I could if I had to. I never actually saw that, although Cary did comment for me about Jimmy once.
What did he say?
He said, well, cyclically speaking, you know, Jimmy Stewart did something that Marlon Brando did years later. His way of talking, his not finishing sentences, his mumbling, the sound people weren't used to that, you know. This is in the 30s. And then Marlon did it some years later. But Jimmy did it first.
That's it. It's great to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be here, Charlie. I love
much
your
success
show.
to the Cats. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.